as the Forgotten War, is a significant part of American history. Many lives were taken on both sides. Almost the whole world was affected because so many countries joined the fight. North Korea seemed to be the instigator, attacking South Korea and declaring war over false claims. It all started around 1945 at the end of World War II. Japan gave up all territorial rights in Korea. With their country free, Koreans didn't know what to do. Some still liked the communist system they always knew, others couldn't stand it. So the country split into two parts. The communists became the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, or North Korea. The rebels became the Republic of Korea, South Korea. A bitter peace remained between the two countries due to their hatred and resentment of each other. On June 25, 1950, the Korean War began. At 4 a.m. Korean Standard Time, North Korea crosses the 38th parallel, the border dividing it from South Korea, and attacks. The next day, June 26th, President Harry Truman is notified of the attack and decides to enter the war on the side of South Korea. A week later, the United Nations, or UN, decide to intervene, and General Douglas MacArthur is named Supreme Commander. 15 other countries in the UN are entered into the war. January 1951. United Nations forces are right back where they started. Seoul is recaptured by North Korea and China, and General MacArthur is infuriated. He goes to President Harry Truman to get permission to go on the offensive, but Truman denies this. MacArthur, getting even angrier, takes out his criticism publicly. Due to his disrespect to the president, he is removed from command on April 10, 1951. Matthew B. Ridgway, leader of the 8th Army, takes his place, and 3 months later, Ridgway begins peace talks with North Korea and China. Throughout 1952, many smaller battles and conflicts are fought. Peace talks continue throughout 1952 and early 1953. In January 1953, President Dwight Eisenhower is elected. The first thing on his presidential agenda is to end the war. 6 months and a week later, he has done exactly that. On July 27, 1953, the Korean War officially ends. At the end of the war, the overall death count of civilians and soldiers is over 4 million. As Marines, both of my grandfathers served the United States. Let's listen to my grandfather, Kenneth Ray, as he shares his thoughts and memories of the Korean War. I know you were part of the Korean War, but what armed forces division were you a part of?
I was with the United States Marine Corps.
The Marine Corps. And do you remember what part of the Marine Corps you were in?
I was with the 1st Marine Division.
First Marine. What compelled you to join the Marines?
It wasn't a matter of compelling TaKhari. I think it was more of the fact that during that period of time in my life, I wanted to help my mother and my grandmother financially. And Marine Corps was a way to immediately accomplish that means, because half of my salary was given to the Marine Corps in what they called a quarterly allotment. They in turn would contribute what I gave, I think. I can't remember properly. But it amounted to roughly $500 or $600 a month that my mother received. And back in those days, it was a lot of money. That's the reason why I joined the Marine Corps.
All right. How highly were you ranked in the Marines?
I reached the rank of sergeant.
Did that make you feel... Were you proud of yourself for getting that high?
Yes, I was. Very proud.
Did you fight in any major battles or take place in many major operations?
No, TaKhari, because I came into the war during the end of the Korean War.
What did you do in the 1st Marine Division? What was your task?
I was in counterintelligence.
What is counterintelligence?
That's a subject matter that's very limited to talk about.
What was it like being overseas?
It was a wonderful experience for a young man, and until you saw little children getting killed, mothers getting killed, being put out of their houses, having no houses, having no food. Korea as a country, even today, is a very poor country. And it was awful hard to see little children like that.
Did you ever meet General MacArthur?
No, I didn't. No, I naturally, as a enlisted man, that's a great honor to meet a general like that. But he was a great man.
Did you agree with President Truman's decision to fire General MacArthur?
No, personally, I didn't agree with it. I think it was a matter of a personality conflict. And the reason I say that is General MacArthur wanted to do something as a military man, whereas President Truman said no. In other words, he wanted to end the war. But the only thing that had collateral damages, which would be innocent people getting killed, like children and women. And then there was a semantical part to it that he said certain words about President Truman that President Truman didn't like, and naturally he's the President of the United States, so he just demoted it.
How long did you serve in the Marine Corps?
I served 4 years in the Marine Corps.
And how long did you serve in the Korean War?
Approximately 3 to 5 months.
Do you remember any of your close friends from the war?
Personally, no. I can remember thoughts of them, but their names, it's all hard to remember that. But I had a lot of nice guys over there, but I can't place their names.
All right. What was your most memorable experience from the war?
Most memorable is, I guess the end of the war was the most memorable part of it. But there were many happy moments and many sad moments, but coming home was probably about the best thing.
Do you remember any of your friends from the war being killed?
My best friend, yes. I remember that very well. I remember going to his house and telling his mother and father how he died and what he did. That was very heartening.
Was the war segregated when you... No, not the war. Was the Marine Corps segregated when you joined?
That's a very good question, TaKhari. The Marine Corps, no, it wasn't segregated. The Marine Corps was the last unit of the last branch of service that was desegregated. I think that was around 1950. And they carried the segregated policy, per se, for a long, long time. To give you an example, I never saw a black officer in 4 years. I never saw a Hispanic officer in 4 years. Although they were blacks and Hispanics in the lower ranks, I never saw an officer.
All right. How old were you when you served in the Korean War?
I was about 18 years old, 18 or 19 years old.
What, were you ever injured in the war?
No, I was not personally, no.
And what do you think kept you safe, kept you alive?
My belief in God and the biofeedback I got from God.
Can you explain to me what biofeedback is?
Biofeedback, I don't know the professional terminology of it. However, my opinion of biofeedback is that to give you an analogy, it would probably be like the young people today would use the word they focus on things. To me, that was biofeedback. I was focused on, I'm going to survive. I'm going to go home. I'm going to see my mother and the rest of my family. And then I would just put all my time and energy into that one focus. And I took that as biofeedback.
All right. If you could have left the war before you had, would you have left?
Yes, I think anyone would leave, but you would hate to leave your friends behind and the mission that you went to over to do.
Did you feel any importance in yourself? Like, did you feel more important after you left the war?
No, that would be egotistical. I felt no sense. I did a duty as anybody else would do.
Was it hard killing the Chinese and North Koreans?
It's hard killing anyone, period. The Bible says thou shalt not kill. However, it was a matter of survival. It was either him or me.
Do you remember the general you served under?
Yes, General Chester Puller. I remember him so fervently is the fact that in the Marine Corps, we call candy and sodas pogey bait. And when you go into the squad bay or into wherever, in a restaurant, we don't call them restaurants, we call them slop shoots. When you go to the slop shoot, you got beer, you got sodas, hot dogs, pizza. General Pulley, well, we ain't call him General, we call him Chesty. Chesty would go and say, take out all these poke vape machines and put nothing but beer machines in there. And that's why every man would know, everybody knows Chesty Pulley. Every enlisted man knows Chesty Pulley.
What was the scariest part of the war that you can remember?
The scariest part to me is a very simple part of being in a foxhole with one of your buddies, or even with your whole fire team. A fire team is 4 people, and generally it's either the fire team is together or 2 of you beside each other. And 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, when you're sleeping, you hear the rain, the snow, and the Chinese communists, when they got into the war, during the end of the war, they always attacked from the hills, mountains, and Korea is a very mountainous country. And there would be thousands and thousands of them. You'd kill 1,000, there would be 10,000 behind them. And they would attack with bugles and drums blowing and amplifiers playing, and it would scare you to death.
Now, in the question before, you mentioned you were in a thing called a foxhole.
Yes.
What exactly is a foxhole?
A foxhole is a hole. When you go to a position, the first thing that your sergeant or your platoon leader will tell you is dig a hole. That's for your survival. There are many types of foxholes. You have a foxhole just for survival. Then you have another foxhole for in case tanks were coming over you. You dig your hole deeper if you're going to dig a tank, if you know tanks were out there. But normally speaking, you take your entrenching tool that you carry on your back, and you start digging. With the entrenching tool is nothing but a little shovel that folds in half. Everybody carried that. You better have it. And that's you and your buddy would dig a hole, and that would be your house. But you couldn't cut any lights on. You couldn't light a fire, and you couldn't smoke at night because you'd give your position away.
In your opinion, why do you think the war started?
Why did I think the war started? That's a very good question, TaKhari. I don't know if it's from politics or internal conflict, but North Korea has always been a very, very domineering dictatorship, and they invaded South Korea, and South Korea was our ally, so we had to get into the war. But it's the same thing is going on at the present day. North Korea is still doing it. And there's been a truce, but North Korea is still being guarded on a daily basis at the 38th parallel. And people are still dying trying to cross into South Korea. The poverty level in North Korea is horrendous. Horrendous.
What exactly is the 38th?
38th parallel is a line that divides geographically the north part of Korea from the south part of Korea. But if you wanted to go into the latitude or the longitude, that's another subject matter. But basically speaking, the 38th parallel is I think it's the latitudinal line that divides North Korea from South Korea. And it's been that way a long, long time.
All right, to your left, there's a picture of you from
Yes.
when you were in the war. How old were you in that picture?
This is a picture in boot camp. I just got out of boot camp. I was about 17 years old.
17. What kind of memories does that picture bring back?
Good and bad. It was a wonderful experience. It took a young boy and made him into a young man. I felt very proud to be a Marine.
The Korean War was a very significant part of American history, even if it is called the Forgotten War. No person who lived or died in those battles would ever want it to be known as forgotten. It's a great achievement for America's armed forces. The memories of this war will remain a great part of history until history itself is forgotten.